guys. And thank you for being here. It's, as we were kind of saying earlier, it's kind of my first venture out of Colorado to be teaching this. So a grand experiment with sage, and the olive oil didn't really take it, which is interesting to me, and the gin really did. So playing with herbs, and this is kind of what we're doing with playing with cannabis. So I wrote the Cannabis Kitchen Cookbook. I teach an online course at Green Flower Media, the fundamentals of cooking with cannabis. And I started cooking with cannabis in 2009, and I got my Colorado Med card, and went to my first dispensary, and I just really hadn't been around cannabis for a lot of years, probably 15 to 18 years while I was raising my kids and stuff. And so the last thing I remembered about it was that stuff that you got with lots of, sticks and seeds, and, really didn't, you didn't have to worry about it smelling in your car because it had no smell. And, it was that stuff that we all had in the 80s. So I went to my first dispensary, and it was lined with these jars of this herb that smelled so amazing. And he pulled it off the shelf and was showing it to me, and it was like chocolobe and orange kush, and it was just, and I was like, oh my God, this is food. Like, it was just a whole revelation to me, and I was like, I want to learn to cook with this is cool. And I did this a little bit earlier before everyone was here, but we've got a couple people who have cooked with cannabis. Do you, any of the rest of you have cooked with it at all before? A little bit? Yes? Some? Okay. Brownies, yeah, I was just going to say, that was my next question, beyond brownies, right? The brownie is like, it's such a cliche right now, but there's also a reason that, one of the reasons that it's kind of the classic is pairing cannabis with chocolate can make it stronger, make it more potent, because they both share similar components, and also that it hides the taste, which a lot of people don't like. So, one of the things that I've been I like the taste of it, especially with the good stuff that I get to grow in Colorado, but some people don't, so there's kind of two sides to that, and you can work with trying to mask the taste, or what I'm really experimenting with now these days is really pulling out and playing with the flavors of all of the different things that we have. And I'm going to send you guys home. Actually, you don't have to take a physical paper if you don't want, but we've got PDFs we can send you after all this that'll have you the recipes and some cultivars charts. You guys here, are you all New Yorkers? Right? So even if you do have your card, you can't buy flour, right? And this is so crazy to me. Okay, and you can't buy edibles, right? What?
Not yet.
Not yet. Good, yeah. Optimism, okay. So I did add something that I don't usually talk as much about to this, is working with concentrates, since that's pretty much, you guys can get oils, right? That's kind of it. So, all right, cool. I'm going to talk a lot about working with flour, because this is kind of the basics of it, and once you kind of get this, you can understand everything else, because it's all of the basic same process that we'll talk about. So I want to talk just first, can you go to the next, a little bit about what makes this plant so amazing, okay? So one thing that I realized and learned when I started to research it as food was that cannabis is actually a vegetable. So it is classified as a vegetable. It's full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, magnesium, zinc. So it's a nutritional powerhouse. It really is. So in addition to its fun aspect, it's also, nutritional and, as we all know, medicinal. So the two of the, one of the things that makes it the amazing plant that it is cannabinoids. We all probably are familiar with THC. That's the one that psychoactive, that gets us high. Most of you familiar with CBD at this point, right? So CBD, its cousin, or another cannabinoid, the non-psychoactive. So, THC, we're wired for this plant. We have in our bodies CB receptors that this plant will feed. And so THC connects to our CB1 receptors. And so that's kind of our smell, we're listening, feeling. And so that's why it gets us high. So CBD connects to our CB2 receptors, and it doesn't bind to CB1 receptors. So it moderates THC's effect on us, right? Are you all kind of a little bit familiar with this? So, if you end up with you can have a strain that has super high THC, but if it has super high CBD2, it could be less potent than a strain that's that's lower THC, but very little CBD. And during Prohibition, when all breeding was being done for, making more THC, more and more and more and more and more potent, we almost bred CBD out, which is, a shame, because this is what we're all seeing now, is that this is a hugely valuable cannabinoid. And, again, because we've just been able to begin researching this, we're going to learn more about, all of these cannabinoids, right? These are the two we know right now. CBN's coming up, CBDV, all these different ones that we're going to, I think that this is going to be really the next exciting moment in our research. Can you go to the next one? And then terpenes. So are you all familiar with terpenes? Those are the things that make cannabis smell and taste. So they give it its aroma and flavor. These are also in many other plants. They're in cacao, lots of citrus. But so basically these, not only give it aroma and flavor, but they also moderate the THC's effects, and they also regulate dopamine. So, and they do all sorts. Each one has lots of little, benefits that you can kind of start playing with. And this is the other thing I'm seeing in so many of what people are doing with cannabis is isolating terpenes, pulling them out, really starting to understand that, what they do. And also, like, in cooking, I've got a friend, Chris Sayage, and he's a chef in California, and he's doing, like, bowls where he'll do terpene vapors before he brings out the food so that people can really smell it and experience it. And so, again, terpenes, I think, are going to be huge now that we can really start researching them with some, open minds and get, okay, so next. Can you go to the next? Thanks. So the way to get this, when I'm going to show you these recipes, and we're going to be doing some manipulation of the plant, right, in order to be pulling out THC and things like that. So really the best way to get all of these benefits is to eat cannabis raw. And this is one of the things that I'm really seeing a lot of, especially in California and Colorado, is juicing. People are juicing the leaves. It's, obviously you have to grow your own or have access to someone who does. So I'm not going to talk a lot about that right now because I'm guessing you guys probably in New York aren't, but maybe. Anyway, so but the thing that just to kind of keep in mind here is that what they call the entourage effect, and that is that when you leave the plant intact, when you use it whole, when you use all of it, all of the pieces work together. So, instead of isolating out the THC or isolating out the CBD, it's kind of, God made this plant to work this way. And that's, if anything you can do to kind of keep it whole and intact is always a wonderful thing. Let's just talk quickly about the plant itself next. So this is what most of us are familiar with, the flowers. These are, egg-shaped clusters of blooms, average generally 15% THC in the flowers. It's the most potent part of the plant. And then when you dry it and you cure it, it really concentrates the flavors and the aroma. And drying and curing also will go a long ways toward getting rid of the kind of chlorophyll, that grassy taste that you can sometimes get from it. It also draws moisture to the surface and prevents mold. So one of the things that concerns me is that a lot of growers are skipping this step and just, kind of sending it off without properly drying and curing. So if you are buying flower, it's always good if you can to be able to ask about how it was handled. Next one. So this is trim, and this is what we cut off when we're trimming the plant for sale. I grow my own, so I have a ton of this, and I use it for cooking. It's not my favorite. It's way less potent, so you have to use a lot more of it. It tastes a lot more grassy. It's got a lot more chlorophyll, and it can give food a little bit of a harsh, bitter taste. So it's not my favorite, but in the kind of efficiency, I guess, I will use it, and it's great if you're doing something like a super dark chocolate or something with lots of cinnamon and warming spices, because it will, that's going to mask the taste anyway, so you won't have to worry as much about it. And then again, next, the fan leaves, which I use as a leafy green, so you can just cut them up, put them in salad, put them in soup, you make tabbouleh. Again, the super nutritious part of the plant, and something that if you have the privilege or the luxury of getting, don't throw them away. That's kind of, what's so hard in Colorado is you can't get leaves from growers because everything is weighed. and even the leaves. So those leaves are weighed and then must be sent to the compost. So it's really hard to get them. But I believe that when it is federally legal, which will be soon, we'll start having access. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about concentrates because that's what you guys have access to, right? So this is some dry ice hash made by my friend who is a permaculture consultant for cannabis growers. So concentrates are, you know, as we concentrated, right? So this average, generally, concentrates average 70% THC, which is huge when you consider that really the highest flower is around 30, 35, right? So 70%, it can go all the way to, it can go anywhere from 50% to 90%. So you're really you're gonna use a lot less. I like cooking with concentrates. I don't do it very often because I grow my own, and they're very expensive. But what's wonderful is you don't have the herbal flavor, right? And you don't have to go through all this kind of infusion process. You can basically just, you know, stir it into your oil or butter or milk or whatever you're using. So I have a handout that I can send home with you guys, or we can email to you, that basically talks about the different combinations. So for if you're making butter or if you're making oil. So you can use hash, which is compressed resin. You can use keef, which is basically the dried concentrated trichomes or crystals, which is where all of the all the cannabinoids are. And you can use already been vaped, which is, if any of you vape, after you have vaped it, you actually don't get all of the THC out, or all the cannabinoids out, right? So I don't do this because it takes so much, but I have friends who do. It takes about 40 grams of already been baked, really, to get any sort of, you know, effect for 2 sticks of butter or 8 ounces of oil or 6 ounces of oil. So it's a lot, and but it's also using a waste product, which is super cool. So, you know, again, it's an expensive plant. I try to squeeze every drop I can out of it. Okay, next. And then just are you all familiar with sativa, indica, okay? I'm not gonna go through this then. Interesting though that now they're saying that Eldridge Schultes, who did the original classification, actually did it all wrong, and this isn't really what they are, but I feel like at this point we've all accepted it so much that I don't think there's a going back. But anyway, so sativa, indica, ruderalis, we've got that. Okay, next. Let's talk about infusions. So when you guys cook, do you usually make infusions? Yes? I mean, that's pretty much the standard. You know, it's back in the day in college when we used to just take a bunch of, and it's just interesting, Mario Batali put his brownie recipe up. I don't know if any of you saw it, it was a couple of years ago. And he did what we were doing in college, right? He just took a bunch of cannabis and he threw it in his brownies, and you know, it was like, really? Like, you did no research on this? But, so the basic, you know, and this is what, I guess the whole thing is the reason I'm kind of talking about all this other stuff before we get here is that this is so simple. And I think when I first started researching how to cook with cannabis, it was 2009. There was crazy information online, right? Everybody, you know, the whole thing about cooking with cannabis is it's science and it's art. And it's a lot of theory, right? At this point, we know some basics. We know that you never want to heat THC above 350 degrees. I usually try not to go above 300 because you'll start to degrade the THC. We know that it decarboxylates or turns THC acid into THC, which is psychoactive. So the raw plant is THCA or THC acid, okay? And that is not psychoactive for most people. I do have a friend who swears that he eats raw cannabis and gets high. You know, so I can't tell you with, you know, any whatever that you're not going to, but so THCA, so when you heat it to 200 for about 20 to 30 minutes, it will turn that to THC, the psychoactive. It will also activate your CBD more. So it's called decarboxylation, and it's a really important step in this whole process. The thing about it is, you know, when we make an infusion, it decarboxylates because you're going to heat it. So I'll talk about all this in a minute. But the point I have, I guess, is that when there are so many different opinions, and everybody, if you ask any cannabis chef what is the best way to make an infusion, they'll have their way, and they'll be very passionate about it, right? There's no right, there's no wrong. There's understanding the basics, and then you can start experimenting and playing with it as you want. But so the basics are you need to heat your cannabis to 200 for about 30 minutes. And then, because cannabis is fat soluble, you're going to blend it in with the fat. Okay, so butter, oil, I use cream a lot, cream or milk, almond milk, basically honey, you can use honey, or an alcohol tincture, because alcohol will also pull out. So what that's going to do, because it's fat soluble, it's going to pull out all those cannabinoids and terpenes and everything, all the goodies that you want, and you're going to leave the plant material behind. So I'm going to do a quick demo. Now we're a little bit makeshift here because I'm coming from out of town, but it's okay, because I kind of want to show you guys all that it's very flexible. You know what we didn't get is coffee filters. It's okay, but I'm going to talk you guys through it, and you may have, the other thing I meant to say is, if you have questions, just stop me. It's like, we're informal here. Okay, so to decarboxylate, yes. Oh, yes, yeah. I heat it in the crock pot, which I'm going to show you. But, the decarb, yes, I do it in the oven. So basically, you want to take your cannabis and put it in a single layer on a Pyrex. And I will send this out to you guys too if you want. It's all on PDFs. But you put it on a Pyrex, okay? I use parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, it's not the end of the world. I just think it makes it nicer. And you put it in the oven at 200 for, I say 25 minutes. Right? The thing with decarbing is you can go longer, but if you start to go too long, it's going to start turning your CBD to CBDN, and that's a sedative. That's a huge sedative. And so if you want something for insomnia, that's a good idea. If you want to have fun and go out and hike with your stuff, you're not going to want that. So generally try to keep it 20 minutes should be enough. What? This is the flour. For the flour, yes.
It's already been dried?
Yes, it's been dried and cured. Okay. Yeah. So, and what that's, so that basically, oh, you're awesome, thank you. Cool, I see how this is gonna work. So, so that's your step one, okay? So, the thing that I just started doing too is the night before I do that, soaking it in distilled water. And it's really funny that I at least have been cooking with this for a really long time. And Jeff, the 420 chef, just kind of said to me, he's like, why aren't we cleaning it? And it was like, good question. We clean our vegetables, right? So, soak overnight in distilled water. And then the next day, basically what you can do, and this will be also all in your instructions, is put it in a tea, this isn't the right one, but those tea balls. You could probably use cheesecloth as well. Put it in boiling water for 5 minutes, and then transfer it to ice water for 1 minute. And so then you'll just know you have clean. It also really takes away a lot of the flavor. So if you don't like the herbal flavor, this is a nice technique for really cleaning up your cannabis before you use it. So now we've got our decarbed, okay? So we've got our decarbed cannabis. And then this is another thing that I've kind of changed my mind on. I used to grind it in a coffee grinder. That's not really necessary, and you lose a lot of crystals, right, to the coffee grinder. So after it's decarbed, I basically just either with a knife or my fingers, or sometimes with a mortar and pestle, just kind of depending on how bulky it is. I will just break it all up so that it's easy to get into my oil. So my favorite oil to use for this is coconut oil. I think it makes for the most potent because it's got MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides, which are easier to digest. It's also really fatty, which is nice, so that because the more fat, the more potent your infusion is going to be. So that's my favorite to use. I'm kind of demoing with coconut oil today because, olive oil, because coconut oil gets hard and can be a pain in the butt. So anyway, so I'm going to use, for this, I'm going to make an infusion, an olive oil infusion, okay? So I've got 8 ounces of my oil, okay? And then a 1/4 ounce, we're going to say this is a 1/4 ounce, of cannabis that we've decarbed and broken up. Okay, so here we go. This is okay, and then I've got a crock pot, right? So again, there are many different ways of doing this. I found that this is like so simple and so easy and works every time, and I don't have to worry about burning, which is the scariest thing to me, right? I do not want to burn up, you know, $150 worth of cannabis. So I just take a crock pot. Mine is larger than this, and this doesn't work with this size jar. It would work with a smaller one. Okay, but so you want to have, so you're going to take your crock pot. You're going to fill it about 3/4 with water. Okay, and just have that warming, whatever. And now we're going to take your olive oil. You're going to just put it in here. And then you just add your cannabis to it. So another thing just to talk about is labels. Super, super, super important. I'll say this like a million times, but there's nothing, you know how many stories I hear in Colorado about people dosing grandma or the babysitter or someone who didn't realize that, you know, cookie was whatever. So it's just, you know, label, 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 even if you live alone. Like, you don't want to dose yourself accidentally, right? So, so label, I usually when I label it, try to put, you know, what it is, and then what I used, what strain I used to make it, and then the date, right? So that's it. Okay. So I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to shake it up a little. I'm going to put it in my water bath. Okay. Now, see, ideally, your lid will close. Or at least this one doesn't, but it's okay. That's it, though. So if your lid will close tightly, you're going to put your put this on low, and you're going to let it go for 8-10 hours, and that's it. Okay. So you know, go to yoga, do whatever you do, and then after 8-10 hours, whatever. What's great about this is that the water will modulate the temperature, right? And so you don't have to worry about, oh my God, it burned. There's not only a cost factor, but it smells terrible when it happens. So anyway, so okay, we're done. We've done our 8 hours. It's coming out. Then we're going to strain it into the jar that I don't have. Okay, that's all right though. We can do it into here. So basically, then you're going to take, I usually like to use cheesecloth. I just really, it works really well. It's easy to use. We could not find any, even at that gourmet barn or whatever it is. So coffee filter will work in a pinch. And I like that actually we don't have all this stuff, because what I want you guys to get is that, like, you don't have to be all worried, oh my God, I don't have the right equipment. I mean, you can do all of this with anything you've got at home. So, and I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to strain it through.
Does the, after you soak it in the crock pot, does it change the consistency?
It doesn't change the consistency, but it will change the color. So you will, it will be green to dark green to brown, depending on how long you do it. But yes, you will definitely know. I mean, you can actually kind of, well, it's hard to tell because it's olive oil, but you will definitely get a color change. And you can do this with butter as well. I mean, you can do this with basically anything. So it's just, you know, it's kind of an all. So basically then you're going to kind of push it through. And I don't have my gloves either, okay. So see, if I've got cheesecloth, what I usually do is just kind of push it through. Got your fine mesh strainer. And you might have to put a couple passes through. But that's pretty much it, right? And then, so you can, once you've, you know, squeezed every last drop out, then you can compost this or throw it away. I do know people who put it in the bath after they've used it to make, why not? I have a friend who does it. She swears that they're like the most relaxing, best baths she's ever had. So, so that's that. And then this is going to go back into my labeled jar, right? And you know, normally I wouldn't put the label on before because it's going into the water bath. But anyway, this for demo purposes. So that's that. I mean, that's all it is really to make an infusion.
So if you have the sealed jar in the crock pot, it's not going to like under the temperature.
Because it's really low. I mean, you keep it on low, and yeah, never ever put it on any higher than low, for lots of reasons. Because again, if you go up above 350, you're going to start degrading your THC, and yeah. So.
What temperature is it?
Right around 200. Right? So that's the reason that a lot of chefs skip the decarb step when they make this, right? Because you generally, you know, it's already heating it. So you are, decarbing while you're making your infusion. A lot of people just think that decarbing first gives it that little extra punch. So, but again, not necessary. And again, you get to play with kind of what works best for you. Okay, so that's an infusion. Now, the other, we talked about alcohol tinctures, and what you guys are drinking if you had a gin and juice is we infused with sage. So again, this could not be more simple. So to make an alcohol tincture, you definitely need to decarb before you make an alcohol tincture because you're not doing the warm-up, right? So you're going to decarb at 200 degrees, about 25 minutes. So you're going to have, and then for this one, I usually use, you can use anywhere from 1 to 6 grams of flour for an ounce of alcohol. So I generally like to go 1 to 1, like 1 gram to 1 ounce. So I'm going to have 1 liter here. And when you're doing this, this isn't ideal again because it's 95 proof, it was the best we could get. You generally want to try to find 100 proof because that's going to give you the most effectiveness for your tincture and pull out the most cannabinoids and everything. So clear alcohol also probably more efficient, but I infuse everything. I mean, I love to infuse Grand Marnier for blueberries in the summer, and rum is another one. So again, and sesame oil has become also my favorite, just going back to infusions for infusing. If you really want to cover the taste, you're not going to taste cannabis and sesame oil. Yes?
So I guess if you had a ratio of like 1 to 1 for the alcohol tincture, what would be like your ratio for like an oil, coconut oil?
See, I usually do kind of 1 to 1 as well. So yeah, and again, I usually tell people to start a little slower than that, just because I'll talk in a minute about dosing. But I mean, at this point, I've got pretty high tolerance. So, and the thing is, I always figure if you make it too strong, you can dilute it later. But if you make it not very potent at all, you're disappointed, and you spend a lot of money on cannabis to make something that doesn't work. So you can always dilute it. That's the good news. Yes.
What are the implications of using cannabis that might not have been flushed properly or might have some pesticides on it?
Huge, and that's why that's why I have gone to doing the washing and soaking it. Yes, so that should pull out a lot of your pesticides and the things, because that's the whole thing here. It's an unregulated market. Although you guys are way ahead of Colorado in testing. Like New York is mandating testing, so the Department of Health actually is testing you guys. Although you're not buying flour, but it's testing the concentrates you're buying at least, which is it's a huge problem. I mean, in Colorado we have recalls still every week that they've used basically Eagle 20, which is a lawn chemical to grow this stuff, and that's horrifying to me. They're growing this as medicine, right? I mean, this is just not okay. But yeah, that's a huge problem in it. And also there can be heavy metals then from the fertilizers they use and all sorts of stuff. So I do believe that the washing is an important step that I continually do. That's and I think that's also the cool thing about this whole thing is we're so at the beginning. I'm learning every day. And it's changing every day. So we're gonna, we will have organic standards. California's already, starting to look into implementing. Oregon just did. So we will have standards for organic cannabis, but we're just kind of not there yet, and we're in a new administration that may make it longer. Okay. So I talked about labeling. Let's talk a little bit. So that's labeling, just kind of making sure that everybody gets that. So let's talk a little bit about dosing. I don't know if you guys all remember Maureen Dowd came to Colorado in 2014. It was right when we had opened for adult use. She bought a candy bar. She ate a square, nothing happened. So she ate a couple more squares. And she had like a full-on hallucinatory, very, very bad trip, right? She wrote about it in the Times. The column kind of went viral. We had a lot of fun with it in Colorado. Basically, so now if you eat too much cannabis food, we say you've over-doubted or you're doubting out. So, but she kind of did us a favor. Have any of you ever eaten too much cannabis food? Yeah, it's horrible. It's the worst thing ever for me. I mean, it's like your day is done. It hasn't happened to me recently, but it used to a lot when I was first starting to experiment with this, right? And it'd be like, and I'd be playing around and be like, oh, God damn, this day is done, right? And all you can do is go to bed, and if you're lucky, right? Because it's awful, and you feel like you're going to die. And the beautiful thing is you won't. Yes.
Ibuprofen will.
Really?
Actually, they found.
Really?
Reverse.
Okay. See, CBD oil will too. That's become my trick. But yeah, ibuprofen. Interesting. Okay, good to know. And I also have a handout for you guys on what to do if you've eaten too much that you can take if you want. But anyway, but she did do us a favor because it was all over the place, right? And we were kind of starting to get a bad name, you know, because we have, I mean, there's still issues with it. Well, there's a lawsuit in Colorado right now that a guy ate a cookie. He also did a bunch of other drugs and alcohol, but he ate a cookie, and an hour later he killed his wife, okay? And yeah, horrible. But now his children are suing the cookie company, right? Which is insane when you think about it. But this is kind of where we are in this industry right now. I mean, but, you know, to me it's like, then does everybody who gets, you know, hit by a drunk driver get to sue Jack Daniels? Like, where are we going with this? But, you know, so that's, so edibles have gotten a bad rap a little bit. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that we need to really continue to be super, super responsible with all of this. You know, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that when it's a lot, can you go to the next one? You need to eat a lot less than you would smoke. So even, you know, I've seen daily, all long-time smokers just taken down because they're like, oh yeah, you know, I can do this, and they eat too much. And it affects you completely differently because it goes through the liver, and it turns into hydroxy11, and so it's not the same substance. So it comes on later. It lasts longer and it's stronger. It just is. It's a different kind of high. So it's really important to understand, like 1 gram in food is about the same as smoking 5 grams, okay? So, and if you take 2 teaspoons of this oil we made, that's about the same as smoking 3 or 4 joints, which would put me under the table. So, you know, it's just understanding that it is not exactly the same thing is really important. So, the next one. There's a formula. So, you know, what the problem with when you make it yourself, right, is how do you know that, you know, how much THC? So what basically, THC is listed in milligrams on the edibles in Colorado. THC is probably listed in milligrams on cannabis that you buy if you can buy the flower or the concentrate. Definitely will be on your concentrates, right? So if you know the THC percentage of your cannabis, then you can figure out how much THC is in each dose so that you can know. Colorado recommends 10 milligrams as a dose. That's a standard dose, and they say that that's basically like having a beer or a cocktail or a glass of wine, right? For most people, or for, you know, for the beginning. I know people, Joey Galliano, one of the chefs I worked with for the cookbook, he likes to put 150 milligrams on each plate, right? So you want to go to his parties if you that would have me under the table, but you know, so it's all different. And so it's kind of, you know, there's recommended doses, but there's also really finding your own dose. For me, it's somewhere around 20. That makes me feel pretty good. So here's the formula. I will walk you through it really quickly. So we're going to say a gram of cannabis weighs 1,000 milligrams. You can do this with concentrates as well. All right. So we're going to say we have 10% THC, which is relatively rare, probably very rare, but it makes our numbers for this example a lot easier. The thing about this formula is, you guys, I'm going to walk you through it really quickly. As soon as I learned this formula, I had my kid make me a spreadsheet. I've never done the math again, right? So there are spreadsheets online. Jeff the 420 Chef has one up. CannabisSherry.com has one up. So you just can go, you just, you know, Google THC calculator and you'll find it. Which is great. So basically, you know, so let's say you have 10% THC, all right? That means that there are 100 milligrams of THC in that 1 gram of cannabis, all right? Now you're going to use this cannabis and you're going to make some butter. And so you're going to infuse it into your butter, and let's say your butter recipe yields 1 cup. So you're going to divide 100 milligrams of THC by 1, which is the number of units that your infusion yields. So that's going to be the THC. So that cup of butter has 100 milligrams, okay? Now, can I go to the next? We're gonna use this to make some trail mix, okay? This recipe's in the book, but it doesn't actually call for butter, but I didn't have a good oil funnel. So we're gonna use this to make some trail mix, all right? So you're gonna calculate how much THC is gonna be that entire dish by multiplying the number of cups of infused butter or oil, and we're gonna say we used a half, okay? So we used a half cup of butter or oil by how much THC was in the infusion. So we've got 0.5 times 100, so we've got 50 milligrams. So that whole batch of trail mix right there has 50 milligrams of THC. We're gonna divide the total amount by the number of servings the recipe serves, which is 6. So we've got 8.3 milligrams per serving, which is pretty much a perfect dose for someone who's starting out with cooking. I actually love this recipe. It is so great to put in my pocket when I go hiking. Can you go to the next one? The thing to understand, though, when you're looking at dosing, is that we get so hung up on THC content, and oh my God, how many milligrams is this, and blah, blah, blah. There's so many other factors that come into play when you're doing this. So THC is one, and it's an important one, but there's also, the age, the quality, the genetics of the cannabis that has been used to make it. The THC to CBD ratio, as I talked about earlier, if there's high THC but also high CBD, it will be less potent, right? So something to really, really, if you can, find out and pay attention to. Terpenes also, as I mentioned earlier, they're not just for flavor and aroma, they will also affect how it affects you. So, and also how it was handled and processed. If it sat in someone's hot car on the way to delivery, or got exposed to sunlight, or frozen, all these things are going to affect the potency of it. Also, how the infusion was made, right? So if it was made with something that's way more fat, like a butter or a coconut oil, because cannabis is fat soluble, it's going to be way more potent. So that's also going to come into play. And then the other really, really, really important thing is, kind of the patience and skill of your chef, right? Because homogenization is crucial, and it's the thing that if I can stress, that and the labeling, I guess, but if I can stress anything enough is that you've got to, when you're making cannabis food, when you're making food with one of these infusions, you've got to stir, 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 and stir, and then when you think that it is stirred up, stir it again, right? Because you do not want to have one person get a bite with 50 milligrams and the other person get a bite with 2, right? So you've got one person too high, one person not, they can't have fun together, and it sucks. So, just really, gotta be, always, always, always thinking about that. There's also your own, you can go to the next one, your own personal body chemistry is going to come into play here. So, your age, gender, weight, metabolism, all of these things that can be very fluid, right? So, there's also understanding that it's exponential, not linear when you eat cannabis food, right? So if you've been eating cannabis food kind of all throughout the day, and you have 2.5 milligrams at the end of the day, it's going to be way different than if you had 2.5 milligrams at the first thing in the morning, right? So really worth, kind of monitoring that if you're someone who's just kind of an all-day snacker. And also then finally set and setting. And, Timothy Leary taught us about this with psychedelics back in the 70s, but setting, it's so important, and it's so important with cannabis, right? So set is your mindset going in. And setting is your physical environment where you are imbibing, right? So, I know for me, living in a legal state has done a ton to take away the paranoia. That was really one of the reasons I quit using cannabis back in the day, was that I just got too paranoid. And now I live in a state where I don't think that every helicopter flying overhead is going to bust me because I'm high, right? So it really makes a difference. And I think I want to kind of end on that note with you guys, because I realize what a privilege it is. And it's really kind of my life's goal is to make sure that the entire world can have the kind of access that I've had to cannabis, because it has, it's made me nicer. It's made me healthier. It's done, it's improved my life. And so I truly believe that I'm going to come back in 3 years or less, and we are all going to make real infusions together and have a party. So thank you all for being here. Any questions? No? Yes.
What do you think this is going to do to the pharmaceutical industry?
I think the pharmaceutical industry is already in. I think it's what are they going to do to us, honestly. Fascinating things happening, and they're grabbing patents. And, it can, and that's why that's where they're fighting it so hard, right? But yeah, GW's already, GW Pharmaceuticals in Britain is already doing huge things with it. What I'm seeing in Colorado is what's happening a lot is now we're starting to pull the plant apart. It's a lot of polypharmacology, right? So it's pulling the plant apart, pulling out the different components, the terpenes, the cannabinoids, whatever, and then putting them back together as they want them. It's a whole game changer. It really is, because,
A lot more science.
a lot more science, yeah. And it's not the plant itself anymore. So it's changing the genetics, right? So they're not growing for aroma or flavor or any of the beautiful parts, to me, of the plant. They're growing for, it becomes a numbers game, right? So it's, we want high CBG or whatever. So it's changing, and it's changing fast. And I think the hardest, maintaining some sort of a boutique kind of artisanal cannabis niche is going to be key. But yeah, it could. It could take up we've already proven that in every state that has medical marijuana, 25% reduction in opioid overdoses. Like, boom, that's proven. Yeah. Yes.
Can you summarize how you did the alcohol thing?
Yes. So, super easy. So you decarb, okay? And I'm also going to, you guys, we can send you PDFs with all these recipes. So we can maybe be putting those up if you want to. So basically, you're going to I usually use like 10 grams per liter, okay? So you're going to decarb it, then you're just going to break it up. You can use a knife if you want, or just have it with your fingers, use the mortar and pestle. You're just going to put it right in the bottle, okay? Oh, I didn't tell you, I never finished this, did I? I'm so sorry, you guys. Oh, God. I didn't imbibe. Okay, shake it. I didn't finish because it's so easy. Shake it, okay? And then you're going to put it in a cool, dark place for 24 hours.
And you strain it again?
You're going to strain it again exactly like you did this, okay, right? So, and the longer it sits, the more potent it's going to get to a point. So you could, I've let it sit for 4 days, and it's okay.
Room temp,
Cool, dark place.
Not refrigerator.
No. Like if you've got a cellar or pantry or whatever, we put it in the bathroom, if you're not going to be in it, you know what I mean? Shake it, put it in 24, let it sit, and that's the thing. It's like the materials do all the work for you here, really. So, and then same thing, strain it through.
And how much do you typically drink?
I would say 1 milliliter at a time. Really, honestly, 20 drops to start with at the most. So there's a couple of different. I have a section in the cookbook where we do cocktails. They're dangerous, but they're fun. I basically tell people you can have one. But in most of those, it's like a milliliter usually. You can also put it under your tongue as a sublingual tincture, and that will come on right away. And that you wouldn't want to use more than a drop or a couple drops. Yeah.
What happens if you cook with like undercured flours?
You're just not going to get it's not going to get as much potency. You're going to get, it's not going to kill you. You want to be really careful and make sure there's not mold. It's going to be maybe a little, the flavor's not going to be quite as concentrated, but and it's probably not going to be as potent.
Do you have any thoughts on cooking with distillates?
With, I have not done it. I know, and that's the way that a lot of the edibles manufacturers are doing it now. But, so I think it's a great way to do it. It's just, it's not something I've done a lot of experimenting with myself. Question? No? So yeah, any of these, if you guys want, we can either print them out for you or we can email them to you, save the trees. So I've got we've got the recipe for the can of butter and oil, the tincture, what to do if you've eaten too much. And this is a flavor chart, and we didn't talk a lot about that, but this is, basically some of the different, kind of more common and kind of what their flavor profiles are. some of these cultivars, and then just kind of ways that you can use them. So, you know, the thing with this is once you can make a butter or an oil or a tincture or whatever, then you just get to start experimenting with however you cook at home, right? So whatever you make with this, you know, you can also make sugar. Basically what you do is more or less take your alcohol tincture, mix it with your sugar, and bake it, right? And if any of you want that recipe, I can send it to you as well. But I don't eat a lot of sugar, so I don't make this often. But it's interesting. I just met yesterday with Ron Silver. I don't know if you guys saw Bubby's Restaurants. And he's starting an edibles company. And he's in for a patent. He's made it so that cannabis is water soluble. He's figured out how to make cannabis water soluble. He won't tell me how. But I'm going to find out. Because that would be game-changing. Can you imagine? Then all of a sudden you don't have to cook with a fat anymore, or an alcohol, right? I use alcohol a lot as a flavorings because I don't always want to use the fat. But, you know, then you could do anything.
Do you use your own? Do you grow your own?
I do grow my own, yes. I live in Colorado, and it is what I use pretty much all the time.
And how many plants?
Well, we are allowed 6 per person. But
That's it?
yeah.
So if you have 7, they can bust you?
Yeah, they don't really, I mean, you know, they're pretty,
They don't go around counting?
they don't. But yeah, so, I mean, and people can get higher counts. I know people who have really high counts if they're juicing. So it just depends, but you know, for adult use without a med license, it's, what is it, 3 in veg, 3 in flower. Yes.
When you say flower, that's what we call a bud, I think.
Right, that's right, I know. And you know, we're just trying to class up the joint here. That's why no one calls it marijuana anymore, right? We call it cannabis, because marijuana is a racist term that they came up with in Prohibition, basically to make people think it was a scary Mexican thing.
What's that? Yeah, that
Right.
one.
Yeah, reefer madness.
Reefer madness.
Yeah, and who thought that we'd be entering that era again? I'm just so appalled. Like, but anyway, it can't last.
Holly weed, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a fascinating thing to be in, you know, a place where it is completely legal, completely accepted. Drunk driving has gone down. Teen use has gone down. I mean, it's just, you know, everybody kind of waited for Colorado to like fall to the devil, and everything's gotten better. Tourism is up, real estate's up. It's a thriving, you know, multi-billion-dollar industry. So, yes.
Final question. What has good quality cannabis gone down to in terms of price in Colorado now?
You know, I don't buy at the dispensary, but I think it's probably, I mean, it's like you're looking at 65 for concentrate, and you're looking at, for, you know, an ounce of decent flour, still probably $300.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can get it at discount places for, you know, $100 an ounce, but I wouldn't. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. And,